We're continuing with Slammed as we enter Chapter 10, Pipe Bombs. And let's get the music going. Last time, we were triumphant as Cunoesse told JJ that we're coming for her. So let's start off with some music that makes us feel good, that makes us feel like good things are about to happen as we get into the Bleacher Watcher 619's report. There we go. Music that makes anyone feel good. The Gua Rumblings and Rumors, edition 433 by Bleacher Watcher 619. Welcome to this week's edition of Rumblin' and Rumors, folks. As you might imagine, there's been a hell of a lot of activity backstage as the Gua comes off one of our most controversial episodes of Wednesday Night Wrestling in history. We'll get to that a bit later, but first, some smaller tidbits. A little worker bee tells me that there's a lot of confusion amongst the roster about how much of the lawgiver's power over contracts is a work and how much is a shoot. If you'll recall, 3 weeks ago, the lawgivers cut a promo in front of the burning husk of Cameron Dobbs' mansion and showed viewers a contract they managed to extract from her in exchange for her life, giving the lawgivers the right to book one match every Gua show, stipulations and all, even title matches. What controversy is there among the fans about whether or not that's real? I think it's pretty clear. I don't think there would be any argument over if that's a work or a shoot. Yes, we've all seen the pictures of the Dobbs' Los Angeles digs looking pristine and unburnt the very next day, but that's not where the confusion lies. Remember episode 678 where the lawgivers issued their first match edict, forcing Tony Youngblood into that 2-on-1 loser is fired match? Remember how Youngblood lost and we all assumed this was to give her time to recover from her persistent knee pain? Well, what if I told you that Youngblood really was released? We haven't gotten any direct confirmation, of course, and Youngblood has dropped off social media. But there's a rumor that she was in fact terminated, but with a little extra to keep things quiet for an unspecified period of time. This has left many in the back unsettled with the lawgiver's angle, which may be exactly what Paul Prototype wants, come to think of it. Of course, even the lawgiver's angle has been eclipsed by the return of Shadow Chaos, or Cross, as we came to know her during her clandestine comeback over the course of the last month. Conspiracy theorists are already wondering whether Chaos's firing was a work, but every single source I have gives me a firm no. They also tell me that no one on the active roster, absolutely no one, knew that Chaos was coming back. JJ Havoc certainly didn't. If her rampage backstage after the show was any indication, I'd upload the footage, but the Gua's been very quick about pulling down any backstage clips of JJ, maybe because they fear it'll hurt her upcoming movie. One thing is for sure, Havoc and Chaos have legitimate animosity, and it looks like the Gua is going to ride that real-life feud for all it's worth. I'm not sure how wise that is in the long term, but Chaos's return has spiked interest across the board in terms of social media activity and mainstream media mentions. The proof that she's being treated like a new star is the rumor that she's been invited to lunch with none other than Paul Prototype himself. Oh, what I'd give to be a fly in the wall for that! It has been the case sometimes in the past that a wrestling promotion would put two people together in a feud that actually did have real-life beef to generate interest. And whether or not that can work is, well, I mean, it could, but it can also cause some problems. Ah, there you are, Shadow. I'm glad you could make it. Paul Prototype reaches across the table with his hand, and after a moment's hesitation, you grip it in your own. Even this early into your second meeting, the difference in his bearing is palpable. Whereas the first time you met Prototype, he looked at you the same way that Rembrandt might have looked at a house painter. Now he seems to be imagining possibilities, or cash, if you want to be cynical about it, instead of exit strategies. Heck, even his scar seems friendly, if that's possible. Order anything you want, he says, as you take your seat. It's on me. Well, it's on Cameron Dobbs, if you want to be technical about it. Prototype's laugh echoes across the glass walls of Chateau Sherwin. A Michelin-starred restaurant that's not used to hosting very many professional wrestlers. There are more than a few disgusted stares thrown Prototype's way, but if he notices it, doesn't penetrate his good mood. I'm not sure that would really be the case. Big-time wrestlers are extremely rich, and they're not very good about saving their money. At least the old school big-time wrestler. Like today, it's probably a bit different. But then you have, like, you know, your Ric Flairs who spent as much money as he made. Anyway, we can order something fancy, order something plain, have whatever Prototype is having. Well, I mean, it's on him, and he's offering, so let's just order something fancy. After you place your order, you make awkward small talk for the next 15 minutes as you wait for your food. At least, it certainly feels awkward to you, though Prototype seems to be having a grand old time talking about football and fitness fads, as well as mocking competing wrestling promotions. Once your food arrives, Prototype lets you eat, but you can feel him appraising you. Ask him what he asked us to lunch for, make small talk, finish food in silence. Might as well just get to the point. Why did he want us to come to lunch? What are you looking for? An ulterior motive? Prototype grins. Can a grown man invite his new coworker to a friendly lunch to get to know her better? You take a sip of your drink. You do realize that I joined up more than a half a year ago, right? Shadow. Prototype shakes his head. Being on the roster isn't the same as being my coworker. There are levels, you see. A hierarchy. And now I've risen up, huh? I like the sound of that. Oh, youth, says Prototype, mopping his lips with a napkin. You know, I was upset at first when I realized that Ms. Hyde, you perk up at the sound of Alex Dobbs' alias, had gone and swerved me. One thing you'll learn from working with me, Shadow, is that I like to be kept in the loop. I don't like surprises. The Gua Western Heavyweight Champion that hangs in the air for a second as he stabs a piece of meat with his fork and then smiles. But, you know, some surprises are like Christmas morning, a gift that keeps on giving. Before you can make sense of that broken metaphor, Prototype continues. I can't remember the last young woman to make such a big impact in such a short a time. Of course, a lot of that just being in the right place at the right time, eh? With such a ready-made feud, who needs skill? Just when you think he's praising you, his arrogance makes itself evident. And what I wouldn't give to be able to wipe that smug smile from his face. I think Cunoesse would think that. It's obvious you and JJ have a program now, said Prototype, but I think it'd be a shame if someone in your position didn't start making long-term plans. A hot angle can be a great boost to your career, but trust me, Shadow, I've seen people coast on that momentum all the way back down to earth. We've got too much competition now, and not just on television. True stars, those with staying power, drawing power, they're rare things. Back in the day, you couldn't throw a clothesline without hitting a future Hall of Famer. Now it's a miracle if the little pansies can work through a cracked rib or two. Prototype shakes his head in disgust and leans back in his chair. You can hear the wood begin to shriek in protest. An alarmed waiter approaches, takes a good look at Prototype's physique, and thinks better of making any commentary. You, though! Prototype stabs a thick finger at you. You have potential, Shadow. You're one of the best woman wrestlers I've ever seen, and you could be a cornerstone of the women's division if you have the right patron. Hell, you're almost as good as some of the men. Well, first should mention the opinion here from Paul Prototype is something that you will hear from some of the old schoolers about how the new youngins just aren't the same as the old guys. You know, back in the old days, you'd like break a bone in the ring, maybe get like a few concussions. You didn't complain about it. You just got yourself stinking drunk and then chugged down some painkillers, and then you went on to the next night to do the match again. And there's a bit more awareness these days that maybe you shouldn't be doing that. A bit more. I'm better than Prototype is. That's for damn sure. I mean, I don't know where this train of thought will lead. I don't know if we'll have an intergender match. If you ever got him in the ring with you, you're confident that you could wrestle circle around him. One circle, a single circle. Not that it ever happened. Prototype cuts another piece of meat from his steak. I know I don't look at Shadow, but I'm getting too old for this. While I may not always be a full-timer, the Gua isn't going to let someone like me off the chain. And when I hang up my boots, old Dundee is going to step down, and I'll be taking his place as head booker. With me in charge, a return to the golden age of professional wrestling isn't out of the question. He seems to be pausing for some sort of reaction from you. Okay, option 1 is an age where gay was used as an insult, no thanks. An age where women were decorations, not wrestlers, no thanks. An age where ring psychology meant more than pyrotechnics and hashtags. I'd like that. An age where the Gua spat on broadcasting taboos. I'd like that. An age where you needed a bodybuilder's physique to be a headliner. No thanks. An age where promos were measured by volume rather than wit. No thanks. Why don't we leave this to the chat? We got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 choices. We'll have the chat vote for which one do they want out of these 6. I don't know if there would be much of a difference aside from either saying that you agree or disagree. Is the reasoning behind your agreement or disagreement, does that matter? I don't know. Number 3 is the usual, like, old school fan of remembering when ring psychology was important, when wrestlers knew how to tell a story in the ring through their actions. Option number 4 is more of the late 90s, early 2000s wrestling fan who keeps saying they want the WWE to bring back the Attitude Era, is referring to that. Looks like, let's see, who's winning? Oh, number 4 and 3 are tied, which you know what that means. We're going to go to the option that was the least popular, which is number 7. That's not an option. There's only 6 choices. Okay, so that means number 5, which is, we're talking about the bodybuilder's physique. So let's see. So, number 5... this is referring to Vince McMahon's philosophy, starting from like the early 80s. The idea was that if you want, like, he wanted his wrestlers to be larger than life. He didn't want wrestlers to look like normal men. He wanted them to look like superheroes. So you had to, get on the roids. You had to get on that human growth hormone and pump yourself up to look like a He-Man character. That was his strategy, and it paid off for him. He made a lot of money from that strategy, but that was the big thing, starting with Hulk Hogan. Well, I mean, maybe not starting with Hulk Hogan. There were some buffed up wrestlers before him, but when you look at Bob Backlund, who was the champ, and then going to Hulk Hogan, there was a very big difference in their appearance. So let's go with bodybuilder's physique. An age where you needed a bodybuilder's physique to be a headliner? No thanks. He shrugs. I'm not against the evolution of the product, to an extent, but numbers don't lie, and they spell disaster for you, and the business as a whole was simply more successful 2 decades ago. That's the kind of magic we need to capture again. The Western heavyweight champion spreads his arm wide, and you're half afraid that his flexing muscles will rip his suit. We're on the brink of a new era, and I see you as being a key part of that. That's why I asked you here today. Prototype leans in close. How much do you know about the Lawkeeper storyline? You're about to answer when you're interrupted by a voice that you instantly recognize. What a load of garbage! From 2 tables away, the Eternal Champion shakes his head, a wry smile on his face. Solitary in the flesh. This doesn't bode well. I think this is the first time Solitary's actually appeared. He's the guy who's just been champion forever and has like this really weird contract which ensures that he never loses the title. But I don't know, like, since we are girl, does that mean is there a chance to ever wrestle him? Don't know how the story will work. That's what you're offering her? The chance to be one of your masked goons? Shut your face, Solitary. Prototype pushes away from the table and takes up a position just behind the still-seated Solitary. They are a study in contrast. These two men who have been central to the Gua's modern era. Paul Prototype is a massive, muscular presence. His Hollywood good looks now distorted into an intense scowl as he looms over his nemesis. Solitary is 5'10", barely topping 200 pounds, all lean muscle wrapped around an oddly stretched frame, with a compact torso that accentuates his long limbs. His face is that of a civil servant, or maybe a guidance counselor, striking in its mundanity. He's seated casually, too casually for a restaurant such as this, sinewy legs drawn up around him, as relaxed as a man alone on a mountain, seemingly oblivious to this man-mountain behind him. But slight though his form may be, there's a gravity to his presence that Prototype lacks, a sense of danger restrained. Maybe it's because you've seen him legitimately demolish men twice his weight. Maybe in a position of rest, you feel like he's a coiled spring. So this is, I think, the most detailed description we've gotten so far of Solitary. I feel like this is a Daniel Bryan character. I feel like that's the closest wrestler I can think of that they might be describing here. So Paul Prototype, of course, is the amalgamation of John Cena and Triple H. I'm thinking Solitary is probably Daniel Bryan. Ahem. This is a private meeting, Stevens. I take it by private. You mean everyone in this fine establishment, because I could hear you laughing from the parking lot. On Solitary's plate is a pile of apples. Just like a big old pile of apples, like a mountain of apples. You don't need anything more than just apples. And without turning to Prototype, he slowly begins to peel one with a knife. His hands, you can't help but notice, are huge. Or maybe by private, you mean I need to possess something special to be invited to the table? Such as, I don't know, a Gua title? Now he leans back in his chair and smiles up at Prototype. Wow, I guess that little pity belt they gave you has some use after all. Prototype snarls a low, guttural sound. Let's take photos. Seems like an appropriate response. Looks like your Toutler account is going to be active tonight. For a moment, you're certain that Prototype is about to explode, and a brawl is going to erupt in a restaurant frequented by politicians and tycoons. But in the end, Prototype takes out a wad of cash and throws it at your table. I've lost my appetite. We'll continue this another day, Shadow. Aw, jocks, sighs Solitary, as we watch his Prototypes retreating back. They mature so fast. Was it only yesterday that he was stuffing nerds into lockers? Oh well. With that, the Eternal Champion stands, takes Prototype's vacant seat, and finally turns his gaze on you. He absent-mindedly tosses an apple up and down with his left hand. While Prototype's look was frankly appraising, you can read nothing in Solitary's but sardonic amusement. It's a pleasure to meet you, Miss Cunoesse, says Solitary. I'd shake your hand, but I don't want us getting too friendly. We both got things to do, obstacles to clear, so I'll keep this short. You interest me. Up and down the apple goes. Good old Paul made his pitch. I'd like him. It's nothing but hot air. He is mine. Solitary begins passing the apple between his left and right hands, slowly at first, but with increasing speed.
Everybody, there's a new king in town. Get ready. Mojo, 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 king, baby!
Yes, that's how Solitary opened up his offer. And anyway, I'm bored. ROV is coming up, and the only opponents popular enough to get the fans excited are either guys who don't want to fight me like Super Owns, or guys I've taken down before. In the case of the so-called Western Champ, multiple times, none of the younger guys are big enough names that people would actually want to see the fight. But you and Havoc. The apple's just a mesmerizing blur by this point. You're two of the hottest names in wrestling right now, and you're peaking at just the right time. Hell, in the span of a year, you've gone from number 238 to 68, and that's mighty impressive. You'll have your grudge match at Last One Standing, and the winner of that, well, I don't think anyone will complain about it in the main event of the next pay-per-view. Your blood turns to ice in your veins. The next pay-per-view after Last One Standing is Ring of Valhalla, the biggest show of the year. And the main event is always a battle for the Gua World Championship. I see that you understand my offer, Solitary says, his eyes gleaming. You should know that no woman has ever competed for the World Championship. No surprise, with Neanderthals like Paul having Cameron's ear. But thanks to my new contract, I get to choose who I want to fight. And they didn't limit it by sex. I certainly don't care if I'm fighting, man or woman, gay or straight. All I want is a good fight. Well, let's see. This is all a bit sudden, if the office gives the okay. There are others who deserve it more than me. It'll be an honor to fight you. You've got an eye for talent. You think you can take me? I'll show you. Let's be a little bit arrogant about it. You've certainly got an eye for talent. The apple comes to a stop in Solitary's right hand, and he rises to his feet. Listen, just sit on it a bit. Let it sink in. I just wanted to put it out there. If you win your match, and this is an important bit, you keep out of that insipid lawgiver's angle. You have my word that you'll be going to Valhalla to take me on. There's a loud crack, and you're shocked to see that Solitary's managed to crush the apple one-handed. Oops, got a bit excited. Solitary places the remains of the apple on the table, its juices still running down his arm. I'd shake your hand to seal the deal, but anyway, best if we don't get too friendly, right? The Eternal Champion gives you a jaunty salute, then turns on his heel. Can't disappoint me, hothead. Okay, so we can win our match against JJ. We might be able to challenge for the world title, which is beyond Cunoesse's dreams. But apparently we have to avoid this angle that the lawgivers are in. But is that possible, as they can apparently make their own matches? Well, now, it looks like everything's going... I think I was talking like... Well, now, it looks like everything's going according to plan. You're meeting Alex Dobbs in one of her typical boutique hotel hideaways. Just half an hour since you dropped by a GWA house show. You weren't involved in a match. Alex doesn't want you to show anything before next Wednesday, but management felt that you needed to make some sort of an appearance since Cross had been billed to appear on the show. So you went into the ring for a promo, sans mask, but before you could speak, you were interrupted by a local talent who reminded the audience about your alleged RVDX use. This was done to give you your opportunity to tell the world that the GWA has just released its official explanation and retraction for the RVDX test, before you hit the local loudmouth with the power cross. What really got to you, though, was the standing ovation you got in the locker room when you arrived. "They've accepted you," Alex said. "Most of them, at least. Coming up to a reality show caused some resentment, as did your tag team push. As Cross, giving you the gauntlet caused resentment as well. But now that they know who you are, know that you've hit rock bottom and gotten back up, they're rooting for you. And it doesn't hurt that a few grumblers envy JJ's movie deal." Wait, you say? Did you cast JJ in that movie just to get heat for her backstage? Alex shakes her head. "There ain't nothing to do with that. Your old friend is an attractive woman after all, but it certainly didn't hurt my plans." "Don't call her my friend." It doesn't matter to me what the roster thinks of her. What matters is that she becomes a big enough star that she attracts Solitary's location. I heard that Solitary paid her a visit. Oh, wait, is this... I think this is Alex talking. "It doesn't matter to me what the roster thinks of her. What matters is that she becomes a big enough star to attract Solitary's attention. I hear Solitary paid her a visit this afternoon after your little champion's lunch. Paul and Hodge, 2 peas in a pod. Always so predictable." Alex smiles at you. "You've grown into such a good tool." Well, I don't think Cunoesse would appreciate being called that. I wish you'd stop calling me that.
Just a figure of speech,
says Alex with a mollifying tone, but a very telling one, you think to yourself.
Well, it won't be long until this is over, one way or the other,
Alex says.
I can't tell you the details about the plan, but it's not because I don't trust you. This is just one of those times where it's important to play things close to the chest, just as I did with your return. Imagine the catastrophe if anyone knew about that beforehand.
Alex leaves her desk and walks towards the bed, where a selection of several sets of wrestling gear have been laid out.
Suffice it to say that a cornerstone of this plan is to turn your fight with JJ into a can't-miss event. If it's at all possible to have fans looking forward to the last one standing more than Ring of Valhalla, I'll find a way.
At first, you think that she's joking, but the look on her face is dead serious. You're taken aback. She just smiles at you again.
So, which one of these designs have you chosen?
Let's see, we do have a few choices. I'm sure that the chat would want to take part in this fashion decision. So we have 6 choices. Number 1 is the bra, top, and hot pants. Number 2 is the women's singlet. Number 3 is the boyish top and tights. Number 4 is the ruffled top and skirt. Number 5 is the leather top and pants. And number 6 is the jumpsuit. So, what sort of what kind of fashion is the chat thinking about our match against JJ at last one standing? Well, it seems that so far, number 5, the leather, is the most popular one, and that's kind of what I would expected. We're going for some leather. It's pretty, yeah, that's pretty clear that was gonna win. So we're gonna end that vote, and we're gonna go for number 5, the leather top and pants. You had the gear custom made in your chosen signature color. I don't think we've chosen a signature color, but I mean, just to take this on my own, Cunoesse has red hair, as we know, so I think red would be the signature color.
You've given this some thought,
Alex says, as she lays your red leather top and pants back down on the bed. This is maybe my 4th gear change in a year, you explain. I plan on sticking with this one for a long time.
And you're set on using Cunoesse as your ring name? You'll be stuck with that for a while, too.
Well, yes, we're gonna go with our real name on this.
Well, Cunoesse, I think that means we're almost set for your re-debut on Wednesday,
says Alex.
I know that I've told you this before, but the promo you're giving on that day could conceivably be the most important one you ever give in your career. Everyone is wondering where your head is at. Forget that these people have seen you before, they've never seen this you. This promo will define what Cunoesse is all about.
You nod. You've already been working on it, but you didn't want to finalize anything until Alex gave you guidelines to work with. As it turns out, she has no intention of doing so.
This is all on you,
she says.
There are moments in pro wrestling where a federation captures lightning in a bottle. I think we've done that with you. I won't tell you what to say or what lines you shouldn't cross.
Alex returns to her desk and fishes a slim folder out from beneath the piles of paperwork.
But I will give you this warning. Whatever direction you go with on Wednesday, be ready to see it through to the end. I will not allow any half measures. If you want to air all JJ's dirty laundry in public, then you best be prepared for her to do the same. If you're going to come out and pretend JJ drove you insane, you best be willing to wear a straitjacket to bed. This feud is too important to the future of the Guadalupe for me to allow anything but complete commitment.
Alex hands you the folder.
This is your new long-term contract. It also has provisions that will allow me to take any necessary steps to ensure that this angle will meet my standards. Hand it to Dundee before you come out for your promo.
You take the folder in your hands. Suddenly it hits you. You did it. You made it back to the Gua. Back to the threshold of your dreams.
Shadow?
Alex calls out before you reach the door.
Congratulations, she says. Don't mess this up.
Wednesday Night Wrestling, episode 681 from the Bruno Superdome in Loveland, Colorado. It's Wednesday Night Wrestling. You've heard that familiar opening from backstage before, but when the pyro explodes, you still get goosebumps. Maybe all the talk from Alex about the importance of this promo is finally sinking in. As if you didn't know that already. As if you weren't under enough pressure. For the first time, you wish you weren't going out there alone, but Alex and Dundee have decided that it would be best to deliver tonight's promo on your own without a manager. You can see where management is coming from, and you think about it objectively. You know this is the right move. This is your moment, when you etch your name onto wrestling history. Ladies and gentlemen, you hear the great narrator intone over the sound system. At this time, may I present to you... There's your cue. From Martinez in Solinde. Time to break out the hammer and chisel. Cunoesse. You've carefully selected your new music to go with the character you want to project, beginning today. Our new entrance either begins with a sound clip, like tires screeching, dogs barking, a spoken phrase, like ladies and gentlemen, or you ready, an instrumental, or broken shell. Was Broken Shell like I think that was the theme that we used in the Indies. So we could come back using that tune, because obviously all of the fans during our Gua tenure didn't like our new theme and wanted us to go back to the old theme that they knew us for in the Indies. So like that's probably what we're gonna go with. You walk down the ramp to the cheers of the crowd and chant of Cunoesse, Cunoesse. That a 3-syllable chant does work better than a single syllable. Like when they were chanting cross, it doesn't. It's really no flow to it. It's quite the entrance. Your skin is prickly with goosebumps as you step into the ring, microphone in hand. Cunoesse, Cunoesse, welcome back, welcome back. You climb the nearest turnbuckle and we can throw our head back and shout. We can run our thumb across my chest like I'm slashing it, raise our finger in the air, pointing at the sky, throw my arms wide like I'm welcoming the crowd. Well, since, that seems to be they're welcoming us back. I guess that's probably the gesture we should make. The cue for red pyrotechnics to go off around the ring, and the crowd positively erupts. It's the biggest ovation you've received in your life by a mile. Several miles. Let's see. Oh, do we want to play the heel or the baby face? Okay, maybe we'll leave this one to the chat. This seems like a fairly important decision, and, well, there's not many choices. There's only choices 1 and choice 2. 1 or 2, heel is number 1, or face is number 2. We've traditionally played heels, but as Cross, and I think that the indication was that we were building up popularity. So we could play off that popularity as being a face as we go against JJ, or we could decide to continue on being a heel as we traditionally have been. So do we want to go with our traditional heelish nature, or do we want to try to exploit our current surge in popularity by going as a face? Seems like most people are choosing face, which seems like it would be right. It seems like that would be the choice to make here. So we are going to, at least for this feud, we'll be a face. After seriously considering coming back as a bad girl, because that would mean fewer limitations, and would probably screw with JJ's mind, you realize you can't follow through with it. To come in as the villain after what JJ's done to you, even kayfabe has its limits. Besides, given the crowd reaction tonight, it would take a lot of effort to turn all those cheers to boos. That's an extra obstacle you don't need. You need to focus your efforts on building the tension between you and JJ, and the most efficient way to do that is to hew as close as the truth as you can. You are the wronged woman, after all. Still, there's the truth, and there's the truth. You could stick with a classic babyface angle, the second chance, and not explicitly mention any of what went on behind the scenes between you and JJ. Or you could throw her under the bus, and then roll the bus on top of her a few times. After all, Alex has given you the okay to, in her words, air JJ's dirty laundry in front of millions of people. And boy, do you have some choice stories you'd like to share. But then again, It might be too real. It would certainly burn bridges, but damn if it wouldn't make for scintillating television. Well, oddly, the third choice here is not a choice. We can't bring our real history into the feud. Obviously, an option that we picked earlier must have taken that out. Don't know what that would have been. But the options we have are to either don't bring up what really happened between JJ and me because we can still be friends. Don't bring up what really happened between JJ and me because pro wrestling shouldn't be about real grudges. I don't know what option we might have picked that eliminated part 3. Clearly this chapter is supposed to be mimicking CM Punk. That's actually the reason I chose the indie music. CM Punk at one point in WWE came back. In the indies, he had Cult of Personality as his theme. In WWE, he had WWE composed music. Then at one point, after an absence, he came back using Cult of Personality, and he was known for bringing up real life backstage stuff in his promos and intertwingling them into the angles. So that's clearly what this chapter is modeled after, but it's not actually giving us the option of bringing up the real history. Well, I think it seems like Cunoesse does not think we could be friends. So I'm going to say that maybe pro wrestling shouldn't be about real grudges, and maybe we just feel like we should keep it professional. You decide not to bring up any specifics about your history with JJ. You don't think that you could do that without your emotions getting the better of you. And while that may make for a good show in the short term, if you can't be professional in this business, you're not going to last very long. Just because Alex is letting you have free reign for your feud with JJ, it doesn't mean that you'll be able to resolve every backstage grievance with a shoot fight. Nor would you want to. There's a reason you're in the GWA and not one of the mixed martial arts leagues. You want to tell a story, not beat people down. Of course, when someone's got a beatdown coming to her, you're not going to run from a fight. But you can get that across without cutting a shoot promo on JJ. You position yourself in the center of the ring and hold up a hand for some quiet. It takes a while, but eventually the shouting dies down enough that you're sure most people in the arena will be able to hear you when you start to speak. Thank you, you say. Well, if we're going to be a face, I guess we'll pander. The cheers again swell as you mention the name of the host city, and you wait another minute for the noise to die down again. Thank you, you begin again. I've known for a while now that those were the first words I wanted out of my mouth when I finally spoke in front of you once again. I wouldn't be here if not for you, who believed in me in spite of everything, believed in me when others didn't, including myself. I'm being dead serious when I say that I did not see any light at the end of the tunnel. You know, even if it had been an oncoming train. There were days I'd have welcomed that. Anything was better than slowly rotting away in the dark. The anger I felt. You feel your emotions bubbling up, thinking back on those first 2 months after you were released, but you fight down the urge to expose JJ's betrayal to the world. I was angry at so many people, at so much injustice, but the one person I was most angry at, you can almost feel the anticipation of the crowd, was myself. You hear some confused murmurs. That's where they expected you to throw JJ to the wolves. Not to say that you aren't tempted, but let's say we'll settle the debt in the ring. I was angry because I should have expected this. I wasn't born yesterday. I've paid my dues in this business. I should have expected the knife in my back. There are always people who'd rather trip you up or push you down than fight you head on. That got the crowd's attention again. You don't need to name names for them to know what your issue is or who it's with. You look down at your feet. So I took that knife in the back. I let them push me down, all the way down. I had everything I worked for taken from me. I lost everything. But now, you lift your head and look around the arena with an expression of determination. But now, I have a second chance. Not only that, I'm stronger than I've ever been. Because you see, I've taken the worst that they can do, and I've survived. What more do I need to fear? No, no, no. I'm back. And everyone better be afraid of me, because there's nothing more dangerous than a woman who has nothing left to fear. The crowd responds with applause, but it sounds muted. This wasn't the promo they expected to hear from you. But I know what all of you want to hear is what I intend to do about... A wolf's howl reverberates around the arena. Ow! And instantly all eyes are riveted on the entrance ramp. While JJ's entrance theme plays, she is nowhere to be found until her face appears on the Jumbotron. You're prepared for the interruption. Alex didn't tell you it was coming, but you've seen enough wrestling feuds to know that a live video is a tried and trusted means of creating conflict while keeping the rivals separate. Given the way that your hands instantly clench the moment you see JJ's face, there are also non-kayfabe reasons for keeping the two of you away from each other as long as possible. JJ is seated in what looks like a conference room, dressed like a stereotypical Hollywood actress, complete with obnoxiously large shades and red carpet-worthy gown. Really? She shakes her head. This is how you want to play it, Shadow? You want to play pretend? Your eyes narrow at that. Is this a shoot? JJ's saying that she wants you to expose her real-life crimes. That's fine, then, says JJ. Oh, that's fine. Let's pretend. Let's pretend that there's no darkness in you. Let's pretend that anyone believed that you were innocent. And pretend that your, JJ makes air quotes, fans were any sort of solace. The crowd boos lustily. JJ just smirks for a moment. I can let you live with those illusions. God knows I let you delude yourself enough back when we were tag team partners. JJ removes her shades, and her expression turns serious. But this idea that you have no fear? That you know what it's like to lose anything? That's an illusion I cannot support. JJ leans forward and stares at the camera with a frightening intensity. It's almost as if she's actually looking at you, eye to eye. Then she leans back in her chair and cracks a small smile. I'm glad you're back, Cunoesse, JJ says. Again, the smile vanishes. That means I get to show you how much farther a broken woman can fall.
It's unlocked.
You open the door to Alex Dobbs' hotel room and step inside. The youngest member of the Dobbs family is taking breakfast at her desk, her eyes scrolling down her tablet computer. Already seated in front of her desk are Jaws and, surprisingly, Madison Rio. Rio flashes you a broad smile. Jaws tips an imaginary hat in your direction. You asked to see me? Alex gestures to a third seat in front of her, next to Rio.
Good you're here,
says Alex.
I've got a conference call in 10 minutes, so let's not waste time, shall we?
After you're seated, Alex turns to you.
We'll be splitting you off from Jaws for now. While he was effective in putting you over when you were across, now that you're a more clearly defined face, it'll be counterproductive.
She smiles warmly at the veteran.
Jaws is just too good at getting himself aided.
It's a talent, the old man chuckles. Well, that's a shame. It was an honor working with you. Likewise, kid, Jaws says. The two of you shake hands. You've got a long future in this business. I think we'll be butting heads again sooner rather than later. Bring it on, you say, grinning.
Now, you remember I told you that your feud with JJ needed a bit more controversy. We'll be putting in Medicine as your manager and kayfabe girlfriend in the interim.
You blink and turn to Rio. She just grins wider and blows you a kiss. Whoa. Alex goes on to explain that the story is Madison witnesses a backstage altercation between you and Jaws, where you're trying to keep Jaws from putting a poisonous snake in JJ's bag. Jaws knocks you silly, and when he sees Madison witnessed everything, he throws the snake at her. It bites her, but you're able to get her to a hospital in time to save her life. From then on, she takes Jaws' place as your manager and tries to win your heart. Why did Jaws never try to throw snakes at our opponents before? You don't speak during Alex's rundown, just sit there and absorb all this new information. Finally, Alex asks,
Any questions?
To Alex, I don't know why we needed this complication. The plot seems pretty similar. I'm not sure how this particular fold in the plot. I'm not sure where that's going.
A straight path, there's no tension,
Alex recites as if she's quoting someone else's line.
But more to the point, contractually, morally, and practically, I'm the one who decides what we need.
It's not really an answer, though. You're going to be my girlfriend? But we've hardly ever talked, on screen or off. It's Alex who answers,
That hardly matters. Do you think that most fans believe that JJ Delgado aside, you really want to beat the living daylights out of your coworkers? This is just another part of kayfabe, Shadow, and I've got the utmost confidence that you can pull it off.
Besides, Rio adds, it's not like I'm adverse to us getting to know each other better. I guess we'll blink. Rio laughs out loud. We'll take it slow, make it gradual.
We'll take it slow, make it gradual,
Alex tells you. Then to Rio,
stop teasing her.
Just get into character, boss. Rio grins. I don't know, but in an indie fed that we were in, didn't it say that we had storylines basically based on gay manga? Like, I don't know, like that. It's probably a type of angle we've done before, is all I'm saying. We didn't spend much time there in the story. Like, that part, that chapter in the indie fed, really didn't last that long. Anyway. But you're a color commentator. Rio shrugs. What can I say? I wear many hats. I still be doing commentary. It's just that I'll be meeting you on the entrance ramp for your matches, appear with you in backstage segments, and we'll be obviously quite biased in your favor when I'm at the announce table. Does that work if we're a face, though? It's like more of a heel thing, though.
That settles it then, Alex says. Shadow, you've got a match this Wednesday, but no promo time. Between now and then, I've creative run some scenarios for how to integrate today's developments during your segment.
The young Dobbs' phone rings and she picks it up.
You can go,
she says, but just as the three of you get to your feet, she holds up a hand.
On second thought, medicine draws. Stay, I could use your input on this.
What? Madison says, but she sits back down when Alex shoots her a look. Jaws shakes your hand once more before returning to your seat. Well, things are about to get... let's say interesting. Could go either way. Whatever else she may be, Madison is a character. You don't expect many dull moments in the near future. Wednesday Night Wrestling, episode 682, the Plaza Funk, Huntsville, Alabama show transcript. Welcome back, folks. You're just in time to join us for a complete massacre. Now, Madison, you know as well as I do that anything can happen in the squared circle. In fact, Lady Skinner almost knocked off Cunoesse for the Women's Challenge Gauntlet 2 weeks ago. Rubbish. Cunoesse was holding back because she didn't want to give us any clues that she was Shadow Chaos. Now, that old hag has about as much chance as a pregnant house cat. Harsh, strangely chosen words, Madison. From my partner here at the booth. And you were such a supporter of Skinner not a month ago. Hey, I stick to continuity, old man. I'm still high on her, but Cunoesse is in a class of her own. I'm a fan. A fan of more than Cunoesse's wrestling talent, I believe. Given the way you drool when she...
Flesh is weak, earth is weak, take through.
The crowd cheers loudly, drowning out any words from Varnish. Shut up, old man. I've been looking forward to this all day. Cunoesse comes through the curtain and makes her way down to the ring. Jaws walking behind her with the Women's Challenge Gauntlet. I really need to head backstage later. Maybe I can get a interview. I'm not sure that's such a good idea. Jaws isn't your biggest fan. Pish posh. What's the worst that can happen? Was he going to throw a snake at me? Toutler account page, username at Cunoesse mentions H. Rogan at Hennekan Rana. Why'd you stop Gua Jaws. At Havoc in the Gua, being killed off by a snake equals awesome callback to ROV3. Hashtag never trust reptiles. Billy Shroud at Ms. Billy Shroud. At Cunoesse Gua. It's a shame. You and at Gua Jaws were a great team. I hope he finds a new prospect. I love Cunoesse at Shadow Road Wife 33. I love you at Cunoesse Gua. XOXOX forever. JJ Fanatic 24/7 at JJ Havoc FTW 619 at Cunoesse dot at Cunoesse Gua. Ha ha for losers. You never beat JJ in a fair fight at hashtag Havoc Wolves, hashtag JJ Rules, hashtag Chaos Sucks. The Order Taker at the Jobberman at Cunoesse Gua. I give an arm to be able to lift at Mad Madison in my arms like you did. Hashtag lucky. Have to. Look, part of being a pro wrestler these days is maintaining your socials. Let's flame JJ Havoc at FTW 619. $200 for a pic of your face after I pin her at last one standing. Yeah, block you. Yeah, we'll just block her. Just block her. I use my social media to interact with fans. By interact, we mean block the fans, which is kind of the only interaction that counts. You flop down on your hotel room's bed and massage your temples. As always, after going through your Tatler mentions, you have a bit of a headache. Still, Guam management has stressed the importance of being active on social media. You don't answer each and every message sent your way. You used to try, but you've gained over 100,000 followers since you were unmasked. But you do try to reply at least to one fan per day. Surfing the internet and browsing social media is also a good way to gauge what the fans feel about you and the show. Your split from Jaws seems to have been expected, so most of the concern is about Jaws remaining as a regular television personality. As for Madison's injection into the story, as with everything that the voice of the IWC does, it's been controversial. Some see it as an exciting evolution to her character, while others dismiss it either as a move to spike ratings in the Latin American market, or a result of Madison wanting a more active role on Wednesday nights. Your phone rings, tone loud and ostentatious in the silence. You groan and feel blindly for your cell phone. Hello? Hey there, stranger. You sit up at the sound of Madison Rio's voice. Let's see, we can flirt. We can just be professional, or we can be defensive and ask how we get this number. Let's just be professional with her for the time being. Straight to business, is it? Madison's voice is teasing. Well, lucky for me, our particular business usually requires more than its fair share of pleasure. A friend of mine hooked me up with a pair of tickets to the Crimson Tide game tomorrow. Thought you'd be interested in taking me, then maybe grabbing some dinner, doing some dancing. I think, well, for some reason, the second one is not available because we're not spoken for. I guess it could be possible that we might have been, but that didn't happen. I'll give the chat. I'll let the chat decide which way do they want to go on this. Number 1 is ask me out on a date, and number, I guess, 3. Let's say 3, even though 2, technically there's only 2 choices, but 2 is not available. So we'll say 3. I mean, it's not surprised that choice number 1 is turning into Pac-Man. It's kind of what I expected. Look, if you give chat the option to take the horny choice, that choice will be taken. There's no surprise there. Are you asking me out on a date? Only if the answer is yes, she answers coyly. Otherwise, consider this to be let's call it an opportunity to enjoy a free football game while advancing a work-related storyline designed to help generate attention for your grudge match. Sound better? You can't help but smile at her wordplay. Well, when you put it that way. Madison laughs. See? It's all in the turn of phrase. You have to admit, she does have a way with words. Tell you what, Madison goes on. No dinner or dancing for now, just the game. Like it or not, And I think it's clear what I'm feeling on my end. We're going to be working together a lot in the next few weeks. Couldn't really hurt our chemistry to get to know each other better, would it? Well, she's certainly right on that count. Madison is a vivacious, whip-smart young woman with a knowledge of and passion for professional wrestling that rivals your own. Maybe it's best to keep things clearly and explicitly professional. Of course, there's always a risk that professional will turn strained, and that may show on camera. Well, I mean, we already made the decision, I think, that we're gonna go on the date. The next day, Alabama scores 28 points in the first half, which basically vaporizes any excitement from the rest of the game. Thankfully, Madison is as good as football commentary as she is as wrestling commentary, and she has you in stitches, even if nothing noteworthy, athletics-wise at least, is happening on the field. While you're both waiting for cabs, she continues to regale you with a running commentary about anyone and everyone who comes into view. As she winds down a particularly far-fetched backstory for a young hipster with the most pathetic facial hair you've ever seen, you realize something. And I think that something is that we like her. She's self-possessed, refreshingly unrestrained, and unself-conscious. Someone who seems completely comfortable in her own skin. In an industry that has more than its fair share of fake personalities, that authenticity stands out like a beacon. Without thinking, you blurt out, "Why?" Madison stops mid-sentence and gives you a questioning look. "Why what, champ?" "Why are you being so nice to me," is what you want to ask. But instead you say, "Why are you here, in the Gua?" Madison seems genuinely surprised by the question. "Why? I'm sure you already know about that contest I won, so I assume you mean why in the sense of what's a pretty girl like me doing in a fed like this?" That's one way of putting it. Madison winks at you. Hey, if you got it right. Her expression becomes thoughtful. "It's actually a bit personal. Maybe I can try explaining it by asking you a question. Why did you wear a mask when you debuted as Cross?" Well, I mean, Alex did tell us that, but also we didn't want people to know it was us at first, just like we did when we were in the Indies, so I guess we would want to go with this answer. It sounds better, sounds more, assertive than saying that Alex just told us to. Madison spreads her hands. "Concealment. You wore a mask to hide your real identity." Madison taps a surprisingly dainty finger against her chin. "You pretended to be someone else. In a way, while you were hiding one identity, you created a new one. For me, it's backwards. I'm here to create a new me, one last time. It's just a side effect that this means I get to hide who I am." A taxi finally pulls up in front of you, and Madison opens the door. "Oh, come on," you say. "You can't leave me hanging like that." Madison grins. "Hey, I've learned not to put all my cards on the table after just one date, and this hardly qualifies. Let's say dinner after the Atlanta show, and in return I'll let you peek behind the curtain." Well, I think the chat has already decided that they want to make the horny choice, so yeah, why not? "Brilliant," she says, positively beaming. "For once, I'll be looking forward to the end of a show." She blows you a kiss. Then lets the cab pull away. Wednesday Night Wrestling, episode 683. The Thez Theater, Atlanta, Georgia, show transcript. Cunoesse is in the ring, about to have a match with Pat Plural. Nick Varnish is in the ring as well and has just finished introducing Plural. And in this corner, weighing suddenly, Madison Rio vaults into the ring, strides over to Varnish, and grabs the microphone from his hands. What are you? "I'll take it from here, old man. You're dismissed." Rio turns to look at the audience as Varnish shakes his head and leaves the ring. In the background, Cunoesse is staring at Rio in disbelief. "Wrestling fans, rejoice! Presenting to grapple for your education and enjoyment, the hardest working, most talented, most determined wrestler in the Gua, the hope of the wrestling world, the Spandex savior, Cunoesse!" The crowd cheers and Cunoesse gives a bewildered little wave. Cunoesse is still carrying the women's challenge gauntlet. Rio offers her a hand, and certainly, Cunoesse hands her the gauntlet. Rio then looks straight into a nearby camera. Hey you! Yeah, you, keyboard warrior, doing your WNW live blog. Pay close attention, because this here will be the match of the night. SuplexObserver.net. Best and worst of Wednesday Night Wrestling, 683 by Bleacher Watcher 619. And so the rampage of the lawgivers continues, with what many are viewing as an uncalled for and unnecessary humiliation of a veteran who has more than paid his dues to the Federation. I know that many of us are always on the Gua's case to book its heel faction stronger, but I think in this instance they're being booked too strong. Of course, if we look at this as a Paul prototype power play, to take the sting out of the fact that Solitary once more rejected his challenge for Ring of Valhalla, and it all makes sense. Prototype's obsession is old news. It still leaves a bad taste in my mouth. You can't be the only one who'll be happy when the next generation completely eases out the old guard. And speaking of the next generation, the Gua may have moved the central spotlight away from JJ Havoc and Cunoesse, but the show continued the steady build to their match at Last One Standing. As with last week, the two rivals were given the chance to show each other up indirectly, with wins in separate matches, saving the face-to-face confrontation for their contract signing on the go-home show. Havoc's match was a better showcase for her in-ring talent, but Cunoesse's squash of Pat Plural was notable for what seems to be the transition of Madison Rio from ring announcer to manager. At least, when Cunoesse is in the ring. Rio's direct address to the keyboard warriors has garnered mixed reactions, but I enjoyed the little tip of the hat. I know all the sellout crowds will probably troll me in the comments, but I still consider Rio to be one of us. Of course, none of us went on a date with Cunoesse after the show, as Rio is reported to have done. Kayfabe or reality? Time will tell. I like this line here about how I can't be the only one who'll be happy when the next generation completely eases out the old guard. The old mantra of the internet wrestling fan, when will the old guys retire? And the answer is, like, maybe 20 years from now. After a fine dinner at one of the trendier Atlanta dining establishments, you and Madison are lingering over your drinks when you finally pick up the thread of your conversation from your first outing, I suppose you could call it. After the game last week, you said something about creating yourself. You were listening, says Madison with a smile. I like that. Let's just ask her straight out, what does she mean by that? We want to know. I suppose it's only fair that I'll tell you a bit about myself. I mean, considering that I know so much about you, well, surely I've got some mystery left in me. Want to bet? She traces a curving line on the tablecloth with a long fingernail. We have a mutual friend, Sam McEnroe. Ring a bell? You wince at the mention of Borderless Wrestling Federation's self-styled Vice President of Promotions. If Madison is friends with Sam, she not only knows your most embarrassing secrets, she probably has footage of them to boot. Oh no, Madison has a connection to our indie days. We are so embarrassed about our antics from our indie days. I rescind my comment, you say. Smart girl, says Madison with a grin. Madison wipes her hands with her napkin and reaches across the table with her right. Shake it, she says, and introduce yourself. You're puzzled, but play along. Her hands are surprisingly calloused. Hi, I'm Shadow Cunoesse. Maria Bandes Huerta, says Madison in turn. Eldest daughter of Mexico's Carlos Jesus Huerta. Look, we watch the news. We're informed. We know the Huertas. Madison's eyes brighten when she sees the look in your face. Ah, so you've heard of us. Of course you have. The Huertas were one of Mexico's most powerful political families. One of the oddest. The patriarch of the family, that'd be Madison's grandfather, had written to fame as Super Jobs, the luchador presidential candidate fielded by the Partidos de Barrios, Mexico's leading left-wing political party. Why don't we have luchador presidential candidates here in the U.S.? Look, I'm just waiting for some guy who looks like Masked Smith to run for president, and he obviously that is the proper choice. Children know who's the strongest. Eventually, Super Jobs had unmasked and made a serious bid for the Senate. On that same day, he introduced the press to his family, except that they were masked. That's very good. Super Jobs declared that no one in his family would appear in the press without a mask, for their own protection. Around 15 years ago, Super Jobs' eldest son, Madison's father, had unmasked himself to run for public office. He's since become a Mexican senator and a contender for the presidential seat in the elections next year. I'll be running for a post too, Madison says, and that means I'll have to go through the destapa, unmasking, like my dad and grandfather. From then on, win or lose, I'll be a public figure, locked into my role. Well, aren't you kind of a public figure now? Not really, she says. Madison Rio, after all, isn't who I am. It's just another kind of mask, but in this case, at least it's one that I've made with my own two hands. Madison takes a sip from her drink. Wearing masks before we enter public service isn't our only family tradition. Once we hit the age of majority, we're encouraged, forced really, to go out and live our dreams under assumed identities. She smirks. Last I heard, my brother was trying to start a boy band. No need to guess what your dream is. You've been an excellent rock diva. You picked the better job. Well, obviously we love wrestling, so you did pick the better job. She laughs. That's the first time I've ever heard that. You don't doubt it. Madison spreads her arms. What can I say? I'm a wrestling fanatic. Well, most of my family is, obviously, but it's wrestling here in America that consumed me. I wanted to become as big of a part of it as I could before I have to, well, enter the lucha social, as my dad calls it. You've certainly become part of history with the Gua, you say. Madison makes a face. The witness to history, more like. Sure, I know what difference good commentary can make, but I don't consider myself to be any more part of the product than random fans whose toddlers get run across the bottom of the screen. Well, I mean, if she's a commentator, well, she plays a bigger role than that. So we'll just say that we think maybe she's doing herself a disservice about that. I think. Madison gives you a warm smile. Sometimes you have to be careful about what you wish for. After I won that quiz, that was a shoot, I might add. I had to tell Alex who I really was. For some reason, she brought me in as a confidant, and while I think I was having an impact on the show, I wasn't really in the show, if you know what I mean. Madison leans forward, her eyes bright. Then you came along. I know that you can't really see beyond your current vendetta with JJ, but I'm telling you, she and you're going to be superstars, Hall of Famers. I knew that this is where I could make my mark before I have to leave, if only I got the opportunity. And when Alex told me that Evelyn was leaving... She stops and shakes her head. God, all this makes me sound like an opportunistic hag. Maybe we flirt just a little bit. You take a hell of a lot to make you into a hag, Madison. Flatterer, she says, then puts her elbows on the table, then rests her chin on a V made with her hands. But go on. You spend the rest of the night talking about anything and everything, the actual content of the topic never quite as important as the pleasure you take in each other's company. Over the next few weeks, you see a lot of Madison. The two of you get along remarkably well, and the fact that being seen publicly together advances a storyline is just a great fringe benefit. Wrestling sites and message boards are full of debates as to whether or not you and Madison are a real couple. While the angle may be diverting some attention away from your match with JJ, it's definitely keeping you in the forefront of people's minds. Wednesday Night Wrestling, episode 687, Wild Bill Auditorium, Newark, Delaware. This week, Petro! You make your way to the ring. Madison walking proudly beside you, the women's challenge gauntlet tucked under one arm, a microphone in her hand. As you walk down the ramp, Madison gets the crowd on its feet, making knowing comparisons between you and local stars or favorites. You know that once you get backstage, she'll complain about all the necessity for the pandering, but there's no mistaking that she is away with people, whether it be in small house shows or huge arenas. You can already imagine her on the campaign trail, slapping hands and kissing babies, firing up her people, inspiring them to follow her. In some ways, Madison may be the most important person you'll ever work with. She's really shown in the short time you've worked together. 7 house shows, 3 WA&W Met episodes, 4 if you count tonight. Well, I mean, again, I think that the chat wanted to go all in on Madison, if you know what I mean. So we'll say, to be honest, Madison's better than Jaws. You slip into the ring just as Madison's finishing up. On your feet, everyone in the stadium, all of you watching at home, this is your Spandex savior. This is Cunoesse. You know, maybe we need to talk to her about the Spandex savior line. I don't think she ran that one by us. I don't know about that. Especially since we're wearing leather. We're wearing red leather, Madison. You throw your arms open as the ring pyro goes off. Boom, 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 boom. And then stand in a neutral corner to wait for your poor opponent. Poor, not because of anything you're going to do to her, but because, right on cue, 2 seconds after your scheduled opponent pushes through the curtains, JJ runs up behind her and bashes her on the back of the head with the faux Oscar trophy that JJ's taken and carrying around. The crew boos loudly, but you barely register the noise. It's been 7 weeks since you saw JJ in the flesh, on the day of your now infamous unmasking. Alex and Dundee had been very careful to keep the two of you apart, even having you on separate house show tours. Seeing her now, it makes a charge run through your body. You don't even realize that you're walking towards JJ until Madison starts desperately pulling you back. Shadow! Madison hisses. You stop in the middle of the ring. Oh, by all means, please do move, says JJ, making a shooing motion with her hand. Move on all the way out of my ring. No one is interested in seeing you fumble through another almost loss to some nobody on the card. Come up here and say that, Jasmine. Please, if you want to act aggressive, then do it with more than your mouth. JJ is moving up the steps, and Madison has pulled you to the other corner of the ring. Now get lost. Unless, that is, you're so hungry for a beating that you can't wait another week and a half. JJ climbs into the ring. You don't move any closer to her, but you do stand your ground. JJ shakes her head. I can't understand you. I really can't. It's almost as if you're not taking this seriously. Not taking me seriously. Look, I try. I really do. It's not my fault you've got the face of a clown. That, JJ says, pointing a finger at you, takes a step towards you and you assume a fighting position. That right there is why you ignore the startled gasp from the crowd and keep your attention focused on JJ until you feel a hard blow to the back of your head. You stumble forward, reeling, then cover up as you try to defend yourself from a series of kicks and punches until finally you're rolled unceremoniously out of the ring. You stand up on shaky legs to see Lady Skinner standing behind JJ, a vicious grin turning her beautiful face into that of a mindless savage. JJ, meanwhile, is using her right hand to hold a struggling and cursing Madison's hands behind her back. In JJ's other hand, she holds the Women's Challenge Gauntlet. You amaze me, JJ says. It's as if you truly believe you have nothing to lose, letting your girlfriend march out here to my ring. You slide back into the ring, but JJ's new ally gets the better of you and pins you to the floor, where you can do nothing but watch, helplessly. JJ's face contorts. How much more must you lose, she screams, before you're willing to fight me? With that, JJ drops the microphone, then picks up a shouting Madison for her eyes widen, as instead of going for a simple body slam, JJ holds Madison upside down in front of her. A pile driver. JJ's going for a pile driver. Oh no, that's a banned move. You leap to your feet and lunge towards them, but it's too late. JJ sits down and drops Madison head first to the mat. Laughing, JJ rolls out of the ring as you check on Madison, the sound of your heartbeat loud in your ears. Madison! Madison! I'm okay. She did it right and protected me. I think She swallows hard. Did she just try a pile driver on me? She seems okay. You feel a huge pressure lift from your chest, but it's quickly replaced by seething rage. Your fists clench hard at your sides as you stare at JJ as she retreats to the back. The pile driver is a very dangerous move, not one to use lightly on a wrestler, much less a civilian. So the pile driver used to be a fairly common move, up until like the late 90s, early 2000s. The WWE eventually ended up banning it. I believe, if I remember this right, the main thing that provoked that was Undertaker tombstoning Triple H one time and not protecting him as much as he should have, and Triple H got a bonk on the noggin. And I think that was the main reason that they said people probably shouldn't use pile drivers. Undertaker still got to use the pile driver, the tombstone, because that was like his finisher. But he's kind of like the only one, and then occasionally Kane would do it. But wrestlers in general were forbidden from using the pile driver, and that policy ended up going into the modern day when they started to be forced to take concussions more seriously. So they decided, hey, maybe moves that hit the head directly, maybe we should cut down on that. Like maybe we should stop kind of not doing that so much. So the pile driver in the WWE, at least, continues to be a move that is not to be done. If you go into like indie feds, they'll do pile drivers all day. But this story is going with the concept that the pile driver is not a move that you see often. Why is JJ doing this? I just don't understand. Let's see. The best and worst of Wednesday Night Wrestling 688 by Bleacher Watcher 619. Allowing the masked lawgiver to get the pin and the clean win. That puts to rest, I think, any chance that Superhorns will be involved in the Team Gua versus the Lawgivers main event for Last One Standing, which leaves Sunday's pay-per-view main event frustratingly vague. I can't remember the last time that we didn't even know all the participants for a main event, and I think the Guas dropped the ball this time. Or maybe they're just confident that JJ Havoc versus Cunoesse will be enough to move the buy rate. They certainly seem confident in the drawing power of the matchup, considering that they left the contract signing between the two rivals for the last segment of the episode. Of course, in hindsight, we know exactly why they saved it for last. The Eternal Champion was in the house! Now, most of the wrestling blogosphere went nuts over an unexpected Solitary appearance, but am I the only one who thinks that Solitary is inserting himself into this feud because he just can't stand anyone else in the Gua getting more attention than him? But before Solitary made his return to Wednesday Night Wrestling, the two stars, who many believe are the future of wrestling, were already on their way to making the contract signing a must-watch segment. And when was the last time you saw that happen? Havoc was the bigger star on the microphone, and I have to say that her work as a heel has been top-notch. But Cunoesse held her own, and the two put on a scintillating verbal exchange. Consistent, passionate, and to the point. And there certainly was a lot to talk about between the two. They didn't bring up their amateur wrestling past, nor the controversy behind Cunoesse's termination from the company. But there was certainly an undercurrent of genuine dislike. They did talk about Havoc using a pile driver on Madison Rio. Madison has not appeared in public since, and while reports are that she's uninjured, the fact that Havoc received a lot of backstage heat for using the dangerous and unofficially banned move. Whenever Havoc would mention it, you could tell that Cunoesse wanted the fight to happen right there for real. Then, just when things reached a boiling point, the traditional flipping of the table, and the two rivals were set to slug it out, here comes the Gua World Champion! Solitary said that he believed that the two were future champions, and it's within his power to give them the chance to make that future come sooner rather than later. To the shock of the world, Solitary then announced that the winner of JJ Havoc versus Cunoesse would go on to face him for the World Championship at Ring of Valhalla. Some people are saying that this is just Captain Controversy stirring things up again, but no one can doubt that, whatever Solitary's intentions, this is a revolutionary move. No woman had ever before been given a shot at the highest prize in the Gua. Still, Solitary needs to be careful. The Eternal Champion has enough clout to insert himself into any storyline, but he never has before, and for good reason. Under one of the few publicly known stipulations of his contract, Solitary can opt out of any proposed storyline pitched by the Gua's creative team. But if he willingly involves himself in an active storyline segment, he places himself under the control of the show's writers in relation to that storyline, because he has this weirdly convoluted contract. I don't know how someone gets a contract like this. Of course, Solitary made it clear that when he came out, he wasn't getting involved, and he didn't, since he basically just came out to make an announcement regarding his own match from ROV. But the fact that Solitary, who worked so hard to gain complete creative control over his career, would skirt even that close to the loophole in his contract, well, it shows how much he wants a match with one of the hottest young stars in wrestling today. Who can blame him? JJ Havoc versus Cunoesse will be one for the ages. The question now is, will it be a match or a fight? And that takes us into Chapter 11, Last One Standing. So, it does seem that we are entering the end game of Slammed, as this chapter is called Last One Standing. So it sounds like that means this chapter, Chapter 11, is going to be the Cunoesse versus JJ match, in which Cunoesse gets her own personal feud out of the way and ascends in time to face Solitary for the championship. I presume that would be the final chapter. Assuming, of course, that we win this match. Now, I don't actually know when it says when we have matches and we have to consider our stats and the way matches could turn out. I don't actually know how much of a difference it all makes. I guess you'd have to read it twice, the whole game twice, to know how much of a difference there could make. But if we're assuming that this is going to take the traditional progression that you might expect, this would be the penultimate match. And then after Cunoesse comes out of it, then she would be moving on to the title. At least that's the way I would expect this progression to go, as that is exactly the progression I used in the Bully Demise story, as Bully Demise had to overcome his own personal demons, that being Killer Man, before he could ascend from that to face Undertaker Retro for the title, which is why I'm expecting that kind of thing to happen here. So, that's it for Chapter 10. As we're now going in to our big personal feud, and also maybe we might also have a girlfriend. I'm not sure if we do, or if that is going to take some sort of swerve, or if that is just going to keep going as straightforward as it appears to be. Don't know yet, but maybe we'll find out as we enter Chapter 11, the pay-per-view, Last One Standing, as Cunoesse gets the match that she has always wanted to get. We'll continue it next time.